Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Manic Energy. I'm your host, Ryan Swore. If you've listened to our shows before, I've made no secret of my belief that responsible local development should be a priority. And today I'm really excited to talk to somebody who spends their career and life trying to drive sustainable, responsible growth locally in support of our way of life. So today, Katie Brooks and I welcome Ryan Sistad, the Executive Director of Better in Our Backyard, into the studio. I'm Ryan Swore, and this is Manic Energy, the podcast that dives into the fast-moving world of energy, business, and the people powering it all. From bold ideas to real-world innovation, we're talking breakthroughs, market moves, and the community shaping what's next. Whether you're building for the future or just here for the fun, welcome to the chaos. Ryan, hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming up and making the drive to be here today.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. I've been following your show here since you've launched it the last year and appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. So maybe just start by giving our viewers and listeners a brief history of your background and sort of what you do today.
Yeah, so I've been running Better in Our Backyard for almost 8 years now, and I'm originally from a town called Fosston, Minnesota. It's 3 hours west of here on Highway 2, and then grew up in parts of southern Minnesota too as well, and went to school at the University of North Dakota to study business management. I knew I wanted to run my own show or be a business owner or a project manager. I worked a lot in construction throughout high school and college, and then I moved to Duluth a little over 10 years ago and worked for a company called Parsons Electric, and then learn more about industry, whether it's Enbridge or whether it's the mining industry on the Iron Range, and then got involved with local politics in Duluth, and eventually got an opportunity to run Better in Our Backyard.
So this isn't your first podcast, right? You've been on one before?
Yes, I've been fortunate to be on a few. A lot of them are on Zoom, and then there's been a few studio-driven interviews like this where it's really nice and professional. And Shane Stopp does a good job with Energizing America with his Westcom podcast, and then the other one I've been to is Aaron Witt's studio in Nashville.
Aaron Witt. So he was you had him as a keynote at your annual event a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
I still remember everything he was talking about. That was a really cool. Thank you for bringing him up. I'm not sure how you found him, but it was just so interesting seeing like his wisdom relative even to his age, what it seemed to be, and just the message he was bringing forward. I followed him right away. I see a lot of what he puts in LinkedIn, and I didn't know he had a podcast. I'm gonna have to check that out. What was he? He's Chief Dirt Nerd, right?
Yeah.
Love their titles for their organization. That's such a neat thing to do. It's but his message is really about, not sort of hiding what industry does, but being transparent and welcoming community into what businesses do, making them part of it, right? If I'm interpreting that right.
Yeah, that's what he encourages companies to do. Like he encourages mining companies and those in the oil and gas industry too to essentially brag and advocate about yourself, not obviously brag in a cocky way, but in a way that shows that this is what we do for our local community. Without X mining operation or without X pipeline in the local region, this is what's going to happen to your property taxes. This is what's going to happen to your local economic impact. But also on the other end of things, this is what the raw materials are making in terms of products in our everyday life, whether it's gassing up your truck or the minerals in your phone. He really advocates for companies like the U.S. Steels, the Rio Tintos, other bigger companies to essentially advocate for themselves, not just high-level executives, but also boots on the ground, people that are working in a mine or a pipeliner that's working on these projects every year, to essentially not be bashful about how proud you are to be working in these industries, because people should be proud.
And to do that, it almost seems like that is a level or adds a layer of accountability sort of automatically. Like if you're going to communicate, then you really need to sit back and take an introspective look and say, what are we doing to positively impact? I mean, obviously there are negative impacts of mining, like their potential. And so the difference to me is the responsibility that goes with it. How good is the company culture and what is it they're doing? Like there's a big swing there. And I wonder if, being more transparent actually forces your hand in trying to be better actor.
Oh, absolutely. And they're already held accountable too, because of not just the companies themselves, but the people who actually work there. Because if they're not they do something that isn't environmentally sound and their friends are hearing about it, their local community is negatively impacted about it, they got to answer to them in their everyday life, whether it's bringing their kids to a baseball game or, communicating with other colleagues at work. So they're already held accountable. And to your point, that adds just a whole nother layer of, how can we be better? And we're already really good, but how can we continue to strive to be better and so that there's no complacency involved.
So that's about communication and messaging. So do you call it BOB, better in our backyard? Is there a short for it, or is it just better?
Yeah, it's BIOBY. It's not the acronym doesn't roll out the tongue very well, but it's a better in back. It was named to offset the not in my backyard mentality roughly 8 years ago, and it was founded by a couple different companies, Enbridge included, and they're still with us, and Twin Metals, and then at the time Polymet, now known as New Range, Copper Nickel, and then a construction company called out of Superior, Lakehead Constructors was one of our founding members, and then since then we've just grown quite a bit, but a lot of it's been focused on marketing and communications and how do we educate and advocate in the best way and most efficient way for the projects that we represent, which at the time when I came on was the Line 3 replacement project. And now that's obviously completed and we're helping out Enbridge in Wisconsin and Michigan with the Great Lakes Tunnel project and the Line 5 relo, which the relo is under construction right now. And the North Met project, we're still doing that. They had some good news come out this week. And then Twin Metals, Minnesota, and then a multitude of other projects in Minnesota and throughout the country.
Right.
Go ahead.
Can I ask how you got involved with Better in Our Backyard?
It's a very good question. So so when I was at Parsons Electric, one of the first things I was learning how to do was I was learning how to estimate industrial work or electrical work at the taconite mines, whether it's a U.S. Steel location or a Cliffs location. And I immediately got really fascinated by the industry. I really didn't know too much about mining. When I went to school at the University of North Dakota, during the winter months, I would load up Coca Cola trucks in the warehouse, and there was a few years in a row where we got like $1 or $2 raise without us even requesting it. With between me and my colleagues, Coca Cola was just giving us raises every year, and I asked my boss, why are we getting raised? Like, I got a $2 raise yesterday. Why did I get that? I'm not obviously arguing against him, but I was just curious because I still would have worked for the same wage that he was paying us. And he's like, well, we're losing truckers and a couple loaders and laborers to the oil fields and in Williston, because that was kind of towards the tail end of the boom in northwestern North Dakota. And I remember I was taking economics at the time at UND, but that was probably my biggest economics lesson that I've ever learned in my life, where it's like, wow, if you have good paying jobs, even if they're a few hours away Williston's 4 hours west of Grand Forks, it can really positively impact not just the local communities, but throughout the state, because the other companies have to step up and be a little bit more competitive with their wages if they know that their employees simply just have to move to the other side of the state to double their wage. And when I moved to Duluth, it was just really ridiculous to me that there was local city councilors and the mayor wasn't going out of her way to support mining. And I just thought it was just seeing what the positive impact mining was creating on the Iron Range to Duluth. I just thought there was a huge disconnect. So I ran for city council, and luckily I had the benefit of being extremely naive and didn't realize how much the odds were stacked against me. And so I lost, but I met some great people through that. Rachel Johnson included, Lisa Bodine, met Kelsey Johnson when she was running the Iron Mining Association. And after I lost, they mentioned that they were trying to put together some kind of cash or some seed funding for Better in Our Backyard. And it took a while for enough, funds to be in there to offer anyone any kind of wage. And I was doing good at Parsons, and I was actually just sent to work on a data center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was there for roughly 6 months, and I saw that there was a position that finally opened up for Better in Our Backyard, and I applied for it, and I outbeat the competition. I think there's one other person that applied for it, and it wasn't a very competitive wage that they're offering, but I knew I wanted to do it. I was 24, 25 at the time, and I felt like at that time, if there's a time for me to take a risk before I have a wife and kids or any of that type of stuff, I better do it now. And so I did, and it's been fun.
So Better in Our Backyard, does it predominantly support mining, or is it more broad than that?
Well, technically it's very broad. Our niche has just been mining. So, I mean, we were founded by Enbridge. So Enbridge, we still work with Enbridge. I talk with them every week. So it's oil and gas, it's mining. So we advocate for pipeline projects that we think fit the bill for responsible industry, mining projects throughout the country, manufacturing, we're open to doing, but our niche and where we've been able to really build our clients or our membership, if you will, has been companies within the mining industry.
It's I don't know a tremendous amount about mining as well. As at Lake Superior Consulting, we have some mining clients that we do things for, but predominantly around, moving things by pipeline, to be honest. But a little bit more than that in facilities, in their facility. There's a statement that Dave Hokinson made to me a few years back that I think he credited one of his college professors for saying. But he said, and to me it's short, but it's if it wasn't grown, it was mined. And to me, like, as I really let that sink in, if it wasn't grown, it was mined. It really is profound when you start to think about it. And it never really occurred to me where it's like, all right, strawberries are grown. Anything with a cell phone. I mean, you grow cotton for clothing at times, but there's also, hydrocarbons that go into producing those things. And even our natural resources that we rely on for energy, is a form of mining. And you can pick what it is. But it just kind of really puts into perspective how much we rely on these organizations to produce the minerals that really just are why we live the way we live and really form how we can live this way. And so I think to me, the question was, all right, the NIMBY concept really is real. And the NIMBY is not in my backyard. I remember I had the whole college course wasn't on it. I had to spend some time studying philosophy in college. And I think it was like a whole month we spent on the concept of NIMBY in one of my philosophy courses at a college level. And it was like, all of the psychology behind it, all of the philosophy behind it, why people think the way they do. And it's true, right? Like, it is really a thing. Like, I think we need these things. I can even be really an advocate saying we should do it here because there are laws, there are wage minimums, it drives local economy, it supports communities for organizations that do things the right way. But if it's on my property, well, I don't know about that. Like, even I could feel that way, but I would always have questions, right? Like, so I'm very open to, like, I want fiber, but if fiber optic is going to be put through my property, I want to make sure, like, I need to know some things about that, and I'd rather have it somewhere else. I mean, anybody can fall victim to that. Mm-hmm. And so I think is that really what you're trying to kind of sort of augment or change the narrative around, or as Better in Our Backyard? Is it, hey, listen, and it's kind of implied, like, we can do things better here than what you can do somewhere else if we're going to need it and the demand's there?
Yeah, I would say, a little bit. But more so talking about how do we bring a lot of these jobs back to the U.S., like domestic manufacturing, domestic mining.
It's reshoring.
Why is having U.S. energy independence not a bad thing? I mean, that's a good thing to have that. And because, what's fun about advocating for these different projects is the model that we developed in Minnesota. Like, when you and David first joined Better in Our Backyard a few years back, I mean, we were just in Minnesota. We were maybe just going into Wisconsin and Michigan, and now we're in 15 different states advocating for nearly 40 mining and oil and gas projects or operations. Like, Synovus Energy is with us out of Superior and PBF out of Ohio. And one of the things that you realize really quick when you go from state to state, whether it's a proposed mining project in Arizona or one in Minnesota or one in Idaho, a lot of these new mining projects or, say, brownfield redevelopments are happening in historically strong mining jurisdictions. So the communities there understand they want these mines in their backyard. It's a lot of what we're going up against is opposition groups that are looking to litigate and stop projects. And so like North Met, for example, has multiple, in Minnesota has multiple advocacy groups going up against their project. Talon Metals is going through that right now with a couple different groups, and Twin Metals obviously has their fair share up in Ely. But if you were to poll the community of Ely or say the community of Hoy Lakes, I would argue that 67% of them want these mines to happen in their backyard, and they want to see the jobs. They want to see the economic growth. They want to be able to do this responsibly and safely and prove it to the rest of the state. And so going from state to state, I noticed it's very much an urban versus rural type mentality. The only thing that I've noticed where it's very specific to your point, where you might meet pro-industry people, but they don't necessarily want it close to their backyard, is the data center argument, is what I've been seeing. That's been fascinating to learn about and to see how that's developing, because there's a lot of people that I would have thought that are against a certain data center in a certain part of and they're against it. And I would have guessed. I would have thought that their first thought would have been, this is a slam dunk for us. And, but outside of that, I mean, it's a lot of the projects and the jobs that we're talking about are happening in areas where the communities have a very intimate understanding of what Enbridge means to them, what these projects could mean for their community and for their families, even if they're not really working directly in industry.
So can I ask, what is your role when you're partnering with, say, Enbridge or anyone else, when you're up against communities? Is it helping communicate and educate those opponents? Yeah,
I would say communicate and educate around it and try to be as positive as possible. So when things are going good, keep it extremely positive. And then also, part of the reason why we put a huge focus on social media is that the more followers that we have, I think we're nearing 40,000 total. The more followers that we have, the more people I can educate on Line 5. And then if we do anything locally, and we were to say do some targeted ad campaigns in northern Wisconsin or the UP of Michigan, the people that may not already follow us are going to see that in the ad, and then it's going to add validation when they see that, oh, well, this isn't just a blitzkrieg little ad campaign. They got 12,000 people following them on Facebook and 20 on LinkedIn and a couple thousand. So it's not just a group that's coming out of nowhere. And so I would say that's how we do it. We try to mobilize people the best way that we can, whether it's for a public comment period, but public comment periods aren't always happening. And so in the meantime, I just try to educate and be consistent. I would say that's the biggest thing, is being consistent on education and outreach each and every day. My goal is for us to post, between myself and my assistant or our member relations coordinator, Jacob, is to post 1 to 4 times a day throughout the week.
In your time there, has the narrative changed, or has your approach changed, or how has that evolved? Maybe how
that's a good question. Yeah, that's
you mentioned opponents, and I think to me that's something we should dig into a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that's evolved quite a bit too. So when Better in Our Backyard was created, we were actually supposed to be tailored to just young professionals. We were supposed to be complementary to the Apexes of the world and the iron mining associations and the Mining Minnesotas, and I worked well with them. And then so what we did what I did with between my board and I, we did a lot of events at colleges. We did one at UMD, one at UWS. We did something at the Reef by the Labor Temple, or in the Labor Temple, doing panel discussions on why is it good to get a steam fitter job? Like, why is it good to join the union and do that? Or at UMD, we're talking about, okay, this is what your engineering degree could lead to in terms of opportunities to say, let's say if Twin and New Range are a success today, and these are the type of jobs that Enbridge supports when they're replacing an existing pipeline. But by the end of the year, I mean, we had some very good turnout at those events, but there was a lot of opposition too, and people that were against it, where I don't know, I was questioning how productive it really was. And then also too, I was questioning our value in the marketplace too. I mean, we're still relatively young. We're extremely vulnerable, where we only had 3 or 4 members, where if one left, I'd be wondering if I needed to get a new job. We were operating with an extremely low budget in comparison to, say, the field of other people that we were working with. I mean, in some cases, 10x less than some of the other associations that I was talking to every week, in a positive way. And then COVID hit after our first year, and then I noticed there was a complacency in the marketplace with other advocacy groups and associations where they weren't leveraging social media like they were. And then at the same token, though, too, there was a lot of cool conversations that were happening behind the scenes, like when Senator Tom Bach was in power, or I shouldn't say in power, but when he was in seat, and when Senator Tomasoni was there, and other players, I'm missing a few, or like Congressman Rick Nolan. All of a sudden now, these people that are having these conversations trying to get things done on a state and federal level, didn't really have a way to communicate as much as they did before with other groups, like they do at the Capitol or at like in DC. And so my thought process was, we got to switch this where we start doing more graphics. At the time I was really aspiring to be a lobbyist. So I'm like, okay, this is a good excuse for me to reach out to Tom Bach's office and see if he'll come on for an interview to talk about NorthMed. And then I'll build my relationship with him so that once we get through COVID, once we get out of it, then I have relationships with all the, state legislators. And then also too, I was paranoid that our funding was going to get pulled and then that I'd have to go back into project management. Not that there was anything against it. I just was really loving what I was doing and I didn't want to lose it. And, so I just kind of went into desperation mode and was just throwing a bunch of darts in the wall in terms of how we were advocating, educating for projects. And that was kind of the first step of our evolution. And we started having Tom Bach featured. I remember when, I haven't thought of this in a while, a few years back, there was a lawsuit going up against the Line 3 relocation project, and the governor really didn't do anything about it at the time. And we did something with Senator Paul Gazelka, and he was the Senate Majority Leader out of the Brainerd area. And he did a quick little interview with us on Facebook talking about this is why this isn't good for northern Minnesota. And we try to keep it as nonpartisan as possible. And and we were able to get like Thomas Soni to come on and talk about it too a little bit, because at the time he was on the same side of the aisle as Governor Walz. And that's where it was really evolving. And we really started getting a lot of recognition because we were doing things that others weren't doing at the time. And I was just double downing on it. And so the first 2 or 3 years, that was our advocacy strategy. And today it's very similar to what it was, but today what it's transitioned into, because of all the different projects that we're advocating for, it's very much a macro thing, where like today, we just released a graphic on Pinal County in Arizona. It has 6 different copper mines within that county. It's a county that's probably 1/8 of the size of St. Louis County in terms of how many square miles are in that county. It's within a copper belt, and there's 6 proposed copper projects in that county alone, and 2 of them are permitted. One just started producing copper cathodes on site this spring, and so we did a graphic that connected all 6 projects. Last week we did last week we did a graphic or some messaging where we connected 11 different mining projects across the country. Some of them that just started operating, including Mesabi Metallics, which is expected to begin producing taconite pellets later this year and early next. And that was a way for us to connect 11 different projects in 8 or 9 different states in a piece of content. So it's become very macro. That's a big step of our evolution. And then with our partners and our founding members, we still want to make sure that we still have strong Minnesota roots. So whenever there's anything happening with Twin or New Range or Enbridge, I like to be very specific to the state and to the local communities. So it kind of varies on a week by week basis. And when things are kind of going nice and even keel, I try to keep it macro, talking about national security and why we need these critical minerals and why we can do it responsibly.
I want to dig into something you might have said there about, maybe somebody who was an opponent to the projects, you still publish that stuff, right? Is that what you said? You said you interviewed a senator that said they were against the project, says why it's not right for Northern Minnesota.
He was for it.
For it, okay.
So at the time,
not for it.
Yeah, so kind of, so
no, that's all right. I wanted to clarify.
He wasn't. That. No, he was for it. It was and the governor wasn't necessarily against the project. It was just he didn't do anything to stop. He had the power to stop something and he didn't do it. Long story short, I don't remember the specifics, and we were able to get Gazelka on within the hour of that happening to talk about it on Facebook and other things. And that was and it's a small thing, but it was a huge thing for us at the time of how our messaging was evolving. Cause at the time, companies weren't very comfortable with kind of getting too political. It wasn't part of the advocacy business model, if you will, at the time. And so we were really pushing the comfort zones of some people, and but in a good way, because I didn't see ourselves being a success as an advocacy group if we just did the same thing that everyone else was doing in terms of how we educate around responsible industrial development. And now it's evolved even more, where we try to focus more on education and just positive messaging. But when you're asking about us evolving, that was just a memory that popped up, and that was a pretty big turning point for us.
Yeah, for me, it's like you like success isn't proving somebody wrong. I feel like the argument of tax revenues, job creation, saying that this brings things that you rely on in everyday life, like it supports your way of life. And it's kind of hypocrisy to say, I'll drive my car to work, but, I don't want, exploration and mining. But those arguments don't work when somebody's balancing the scale with sustainability and environmental protection and setting up the world or the earth for future generations, right? It doesn't convince the people that, you're really talking to. To me, it's all about partnership. It's all about acknowledging concerns, acknowledging risks, and then talking about what responsible approaches look like, and also trying to educate on how it could be done otherwise, if not here, and maybe other countries, and what that has for impacts on our economics as well as impacts on the world and the footprint. If you look at, environmental impact, I mean, I don't have a measurement, but it's certainly going to be lower here, for the reasons of regulation and, communities holding companies responsible. You guys put out a really good post. This is a few years back. I really appreciate it. I thought it was a really good message. I wanted to give some feedback on it. And this is a few years ago, but I'm just kind of mentally remembering it, where it showed, like on the left side, it was on LinkedIn. On the left side, it showed an active mine and sort of what it looked like and the impacts on the earth. And then on the right side, it talked about reclamation and that exact same photo and what it looked like now and what was done with it after the fact. And that was really cool because it's like, okay, we can do this responsibly. And at the end of the day, it actually got left in a better state, at least as you look at it from what it was originally found, which was really cool because I think that's the right message. Like, it's not, should we do this project? Should we not do this project? Will it bring tax revenue? Because the people that are against it don't care about that. Like, job creation isn't worth it, right? In most people's eyes, if they're concerned mostly about the environment or the quality of their water or the health of their children, like job creation doesn't always balance that, right? It's tough to really convince somebody that way. But partnering with by saying we're concerned about those things too, and here's how you do it right. I thought that was a really good example of kind of saying this is how to do it responsibly.
Piggybacking on that, I had recently heard from someone. They explained when you're having these difficult conversations, you almost have to find the space to have a productive conversation. You have to meet them where they're at emotionally, and then try to get in that way. With that, what have you learned about communities and how they evaluate the risks and then the opportunities when you communicate to them?
Well, yeah, and to Ryan's point earlier, I mean, we like to talk about, I mean, obviously show reclamation stories. You were referencing the Flambeau mine. It's a copper mine that ran from 1993 to 1997. It was owned and operated by Rio Tinto, and we did one for Line 3 too, like the construction of the replacement, and then showing what it looks like underground, and farmers can field over it again. It was a fun post. It didn't get as much traction as the Flambeau mine did, but we like, it's all of the above. I mean, it's one day we're talking about jobs, one day we're talking about, this is a great example of responsible industrial development. I'm actually working with a coal mining company over the next few weeks on showing a reclamation success story that they've had. We're going to be featuring a coal mine that's actually owned by a tribe in New Mexico in the next month. But it's the way I look at how we're doing certain things. We're just we're just doing all of the above, where one day it's jobs, one day it's success stories. And then even too, the example that you're referencing, many of the opposition groups that, or if there's community members that have concerns against a certain mining project, and especially in Minnesota, they'll claim that that mine was not environmentally friendly because they're looking for anything and everything to stop a project. So that's too sometimes why we go back to talking about the economic impact, because, and then I'll get to your question on the community part of it is, with opposition groups, their business model is to stop a project. So any type of mining project or pipeline project that comes up, they're not looking to partner or to meet in the middle on anything. They're looking to, how can we message this in a way where we can stop it, raise more money, and litigate this project to death until it's gone. So the people that you got to get on your side are kind of the people in the middle that are paying attention but not paying too much of attention. They know enough to be dangerous but not really picking a side. There's like this 60 to 70% in the middle that just don't care as much as they maybe should or shouldn't. I don't know, because they're busy with their everyday lives. And so those are the people that we're trying to target. And Reclamation has been huge on showing those examples, because the the flammable mine's a great, I mean, my mom, I remember showing my mom and she was kind of like, whoa, like I didn't even know that was a thing or possible. And a lot of people don't know about that. And I would say that's another great example of what the mining industry should talk about more of, is those reclamation stories.
Success stories.
Yep.
And I see it in really the oil and gas industry as well. And to me, there's something I'd seen over the years where, and I like to put it in real perspective, where I was out in North Dakota and doing work for a certain operator, and you can see the cornfields, and you can actually look and see it's buried below ground, but you can tell by the way the corn's growing where these assets run. If you're paying attention, I know where they are. There's line markers. You can look and you can say, all right, well, that's where the asset is. And in some systems, one of them I'm working on, you can see it because the corn's stunted.
I was just going to say,
it's not growing the right way.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So you can see it there. And then there was one time where I was working on a project, and I'll say the name because it was Enbridge, because I think they probably wouldn't be mad at me for saying it. And I remember, and I hadn't noticed I was working, and the landowner came up to me, and you never know what the landowner's going to say when you're working on there. I was on the road right away, but came up and said, "Hey, are they putting in new lines?" I said, I don't know. That's not why I'm here. I'm here testing the integrity of this asset, making sure things are running safely, type of thing. And he was like, "Oh, dang it. Well, hopefully they do." I kind of looked at him. I was like, "Oh, really? You're an advocate?" He goes, "Look at the corn." I looked at it, and it was probably everything in the right of way was the other way around. It was a foot taller. And he was like, "They do such a great job with restoration that, I have significantly better production anytime this company comes through." To me, that's responsive. That's the difference. That's the responsibility gap that we should be paying attention to, is which organizations are doing things, because the cost difference between those two stories is massive. Like, it's multiple percents. And I won't say exactly, but it might be, restoration might be, a quarter to 40% of project cost.
Which is amazing. Which is
amazing
when you're talking about especially if you're talking about like $1 billion, multi-billion dollar project.
Do it right,
I mean, that's
is really, and so the companies that are investing in that and actually doing it right, like, it's like we should celebrate that.
Oh,
and I like that you're doing that.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
So you've really grown. Like, it's kind of neat. Like, so you start with like Duluth roots, you start with northern Minnesota roots, advocacy locally at the state level, and now it sounds like nationally. And you're talking about not how do we create jobs for this community, how do we better communicate with the mayor. You're talking about how do we balance and responsibility with energy independence. Mm-hmm. And it's like that's a much more macro conversation. What has that journey been like?
Well, it's been a lot of fun. It's what I liked about the name Better in Our Backyard, where I saw the opportunity for growth in the future, is it wasn't specific to a city, a region, or a state, or even just a number of states, or like we weren't even specific to the Midwest. And in terms of our name, and our logo was specific to Minnesota. And so the journey, so I would say after I've been running for 8 years, after about 18 months, and I started hitting my stride on communications, I had a gut feeling that eventually we could take this national, because I was starting to learn about other projects, whether it was in the oil and gas sector or mining across the country, that every state seems to have their Line 3, their North Met, their twin metals that people are trying to stop, or opposition groups are trying to stop. And I thought our model is very scalable in terms of how we do everything. It's very digital, digitized. We do all of our own graphic design, a lot of our own video editing. And when we were producing a lot more videos during COVID, because out of need, essentially, because we just didn't have the budget for it. I couldn't afford to have someone pay someone to do a graphic every day. We would have ran out of money within a few weeks. But the journey first started with when Line 3 got replaced, or when it completed. Our funding was still vulnerable enough where if someone left, I don't know if we would have survived. And so I found someone to recreate our logo so that it's not Minnesota focused, but it still tailors to our older logo so that people still recognize us. Same color scheme, all that stuff. And then I pitched it to Enbridge, because at the time I was noticing that Line 5 was quite a bit in the news between Michigan's attorney general and their governor was doing lawsuits against Line 5. And then Canada and Trudeau at the time was in the news a lot, because he was threatening, invoking treaty rights of Line 5 or to be shut down. Like, this would be a fun project to advocate for. And so so I pitched it, and Enbridge accepted, and we went into Wisconsin and Michigan. And then at the time, I had just been starting to talk to a company out of Idaho called Perpetua Resources, and we were exchanging notes on how we communicate. We got their attention even when we still had our old logo, and it was more just kind of exchanging notes amongst colleagues because they had a pretty forward-thinking advocacy style in terms of how they advocate for their own projects. So to Aaron Witt's points, they were very good about talking about themselves and why their project is a good thing for Northern Idaho and for national security, because it's a gold mining project, but one of the byproducts in their deposit is a critical mineral called antimony, which you need for munitions and armor-piercing bullets. And for the longest time, the U.S. wasn't producing any, and 90% of the global supply is controlled by China and Russia, which makes us extremely vulnerable. So literally, that project is a national security asset. And when we changed up our logo, then that gave us an avenue to give them a value proposition on why, hey, join us and we can be complementary to your associations, because every state has their own mining association or economic development firm, and I knew how to work with them already. And so then Perpetua joined, and then after they joined, then there was another company called Resolution Copper where they were going through very similar issues that Twin Metals and New Range at the time were going through. And so I pitched them some certain things, and then Resolution joined, and then once Resolution joined, there were some dominoes that fell in Arizona where a couple more projects joined. And then I would say in the last 18 to 24 months, we've just exploded, where we were in just Minnesota my first couple of years, and we were in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, then Idaho, then Arizona. And then in the last 12 months, we've went from being in 5 states to 15, and we'll probably be in 16 or 17 by the end of the year in terms of advocating for different projects.
Do you know if anybody's taking and that's really intense. Like that's a lot of growth. It's pretty neat. And so you probably had to add team members and go on.
Yeah, we have one other full-time person. So it's extremely lean operation.
Yeah, sounds like
so it's lean, but we're efficient in terms of how we're doing things. And that's back to the evolution on advocacy, where I really love connecting the dots between certain projects across the country, including with Line 5 and different pieces of energy. There's a content idea that I've been pitching other companies that I've been working off and on for the last 6 months, where these are the top 10 critical pieces of energy infrastructure across the Midwest, whether that's Line 5, Line 3, the Boswell Power Plant in Grand Rapids, Ignite Energy Council in North Dakota. How do we educate people on who's providing the power to these mines, who's providing the power to your homes, whether it's in Bismarck or Minneapolis, and so we've gotten pretty efficient in terms of how we connect all these projects to keep those players happy. But it is getting to a point where we'll probably have to bring another full-time person on, and we do have an intern helping us out part-time too.
I'm curious, do you know of anybody so I feel like that's the now, right?
Yep.
Are there any organizations, to me, people who solve problems, or it takes people to solve problems, right? It takes talent, and we need more talent coming into these companies to try and solve whatever problems we face, whether those are economic or environmental. I'm very much an advocate for, if you don't like the way something's done, pick up a shovel, become a part of it. Don't complain about it. Don't go oppose it. Just try and fix it, right? Be in that industry if you're really passionate about it. A huge advocate for youth education. And something Aaron had said in your keynote that you had him for at the Better in Our Backyard annual event. It was really interesting to me, because I'm just not a professional in Katie's space, about the target audience and what platform is being used. If you remember that, where we talked about, all right, if you want to talk to this generation, use Facebook. If you want to talk to this generation, this community, use LinkedIn. If you want to talk to this group, you got to use TikTok or Instagram. Yep. And I was like, oh, wow, that just makes a lot of sense, because I don't have those other two. So, of course, that's probably where you communicate with people that aren't my generation. Are there any groups that are advocating by educating, about whether it's mining or energy or just a lot of this project work we've seen, especially in the past maybe few years, if not decade, at the youth level? Anybody you're aware of that's really targeting that, so that 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, that narrative is changing itself?
I haven't seen it too much. I know in the last year or so, I know Julie Lucas has posted a couple times with Mining Minnesota, talking directly with students. That was a focus of mine my first year at Better in Our Backyard. And then on the different platforms where we got a pretty good following on LinkedIn and Facebook, but and a little bit on TikTok. But to add to your point on getting to that younger generation, we definitely are trying to figure out a way to continue growing our following on Instagram and TikTok. That's definitely been a challenge in comparison to on LinkedIn and Facebook, because Facebook is usually older generation, LinkedIn strictly professional. The ages vary on all different levels. But Instagram and TikTok, if you want to target the people that are 25 and younger, or 18 and 18 and younger, hopefully there's not too many people younger than 18 that are on these things. Like hopefully they're waiting until adulthood to get addicted to some of these apps. But no, there isn't too many. I haven't seen too many groups that are focused directly on like being in elementary schools and high schools. And I do think that there's definitely an opportunity there in that space. And if anyone knows how to get into that, let me know, because it's a tough nut to crack, especially with some of these teachers. And like my first year in Duluth, I remember I developed like an Excel spreadsheet of all the Duluth teachers, some of the teachers on the Iron Range, all the different community colleges and UMD. And it's, especially in Duluth, it's a tough sell to get any of these high school teachers to talk anything remotely close to oil and gas and mining, unfortunately.
So what do you see as the future of, better in our backyard, or, what are the problems of tomorrow or the solutions of tomorrow?
It's a great question. I mean, it's been one of those things where lately what I've been trying to do is actually just stop and slow down a little bit and actually take some time to strategize on where are we going in the next year, and be intentional about our direction, and which is tough to do. It's easier to do when you have 4 or 5 people to keep happy, but when you explode to different states and you're speaking at different conferences, it's easy to just kind of lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish. And what I want to accomplish is that we're the best and most efficient advocacy association in the country. And I think we're on track there. And part of the ways that I want to make sure that we do that is, one, staying consistent always, making sure Jacob, my member relations coordinator, has the tools to grow and succeed, whether it's with Better in Our Backyard or in his next venture, whatever he chooses to do, and make sure that the people who are helping us are in a position to succeed, whether it's a vendor, whether it's someone working directly with Better in Our Backyard. And then a big key to our growth and how we're going to continue to grow and evolve is we're doing an annual conference now every year in Minneapolis. And last year it called the Mining Energy Expo. And I wanted us to create a conference or an expo that basically celebrates projects across the country and education around the projects. And like this year, for example, we're going to have nearly 500 people there in Minneapolis, and we're going to have roughly 90 speakers, and we have nearly 50 total already of mining energy companies attending or speaking. So whether that's Xcel Energy, Minnesota Power, Enbridge, US Steel's coming. There are multiple different companies, New Range, Twin, 6 or 7 from Arizona, a few from Idaho, a few from Montana, a few from Alaska.
Even growing and managing that on your own sounds like a lot.
That I actually have a team for. So we're partnering with a great company, Giant, which is right across the street. And so there I actually have a staff, and we're working together on stuff. So that's been nice. That's still something that I'm getting used to, where I was on a call. I was on a call this morning, and I was saying, well, did you guys remember, like, what about this or what about this? And they're like, Ryan, we were on that like a month ago. Like, we got it done. We're good. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Like, I'm used to having to do that. Or Jacob, we have a golf event coming up at the end of the month, and he's got a lot of it already dialed in. And I mean, just a few years ago, I had to have my mom help me staff the Better Backyard golf event, my aunt, because we couldn't afford all the labor, and that goes with running a golf event. And even with my winter dinner, we for our out of town guests, we like to drop off kind of goodie Better Backyard items to people that are flying in from Arizona or some of our main level partners. And my mom was dropping off stuff to them, taking the day off and from the business that she runs, and helping me make sure that they're getting their things. And now it's just totally different now, where it's like, wow, like, you can actually have a supporting cast, and it's nice. I'm still getting used to it. And, but I hope I'm always continually somewhat getting used to it, because then I'm going to be grateful and not be stuck up. Maybe, I don't know. So that's my biggest concern. So, and you asked a question before. What was that question again? About communities? Oh,
yes. What have you learned about how communities evaluate like risk versus the opportunity?
That's a really good question. I don't know on the specifics, but I think it goes back to some of the points at the beginning where, like in Hoyt Lakes, Minnesota, they want North Med to go through. But if you were to ask anyone in the Twin Cities about North Med or in Duluth, they might have a different say. Like I know in Duluth, their concern is the water quality of Lake Superior. In Hoyt Lakes, they're not really too worried about that. They're worried about is our high school going to shut down? Is our hospital going to shut down? Are my kids going to move away? Are they not going to stick around where they grew, where I raised them? I mean, so the concerns just vary from community to community. And again, back to the data center thing, that's been the most fascinating thing to watch because there's actually local community members that have real concerns. And that's been a very interesting case study to look at. Just the nerd in me anyway, just following that and seeing that. And it's like, wow, it's a good reminder, like you do really need upfront community engagement and education around what you're doing.
And those organizations, at least it seems right now, are very kind of under the radar trying to be, right?
Yes,
not
and
about
it's
the
not
project,
working.
but you don't even know who they are.
Yep.
It's like, and it's probably Google or Microsoft or the organization everybody knows and uses every day, but doesn't really, there's no education or communication there, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, like I'm not going to even say who I was working for, but the project that I was mentioning when I was at Parsons, the data center in Oklahoma, we couldn't call them by their name. We had to call them the client. We couldn't even say their name. I mean, and that's evolving quickly. I mean,
it's a highly competitive space.
It is. Yep. It's needed. It's interesting.
I like what you say. It's not about one community. It's about multiple communities and concerns can vary. That's an interesting thing.
That's really complex.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know you've got a lean team and a lot of important work on your plate. And so for making the drive and for taking the time to sort of educate us on better in our backyard and maybe how we can think and work and make improvements. But really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Excellent. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ryan.
That's right. Yep. That's a wrap on this episode of Manic Energy, where the only constant is change. If you're fired up, do us a solid. Follow the show, leave a quick review, or send it to a friend. Got questions, ideas, or a topic you want us to dig into? Drop us a line at the link in the show description. Thanks for riding the current with us. Until next time, stay charged.